Hello, and welcome to today's conversation on low-code, no-code, and the changing developer. I'm Bennett Richardson, president of Protocol. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our partners at Appian for making today's event possible. At Protocol, we aim to arm you as professionals in technology, business, and policy with actionable news and analysis to help you do your job. Application and process development have proven as expensive as they are difficult, and a thriving market of tools and software designed to make it easier for everyone to use those systems has emerged as a force in enterprise tech, as shown in Protocol's most recent Power Index ranking. As organizations endeavor to become more tech literate from top to bottom, the race to get low-code and no-code tools in the hands of more and more employees has forced executives to set up new strategies and infrastructures to ensure that the company can make full use of that software. In today's event, we'll discuss the underlying tech in low-code, no-code, and we'll hear from executives who successfully implemented low-code, no-code strategies. We're glad you could tune in today. If you're not already subscribed, don't forget to sign up for the Protocol Brain Trust and Protocol Enterprise and our entire family of newsletters at protocol.com/newsletters. To kick things off, I'm excited to bring up Matt Calkins for an executive conversation on low-code, no-code, and where the industry is heading. Matt is founder and CEO of Appian. Matt grew Appian from a startup in his basement to the most successful software IPO of 2017 with only $10 million of outside capital. Appian really pioneered the entire low-code industry. We're the first company in this space to go public. Matt, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Bennett, it's a pleasure to be here.
So, Matt, Appian, longtime leader in the low-code market. The space has never been hotter or more in the spotlight than it is right now. Let's start at the very top. I'm curious to hear how you really define the space. What do we mean when we say low code?
Well, low code is the new way to create a process, right? It's getting popular because it matches the moment. It empowers people. It enables change, but it's the new way to create a process or an application. And the main difference between it and the old way is that you don't use as much code. Instead, you draw a flow chart, like it's a workflow, but it looks like a flow chart. You draw that, you configure it, and it becomes the program. So this is a great intuitive new way to program that enables us to communicate with machines as if we were communicating with another person. It's a very human and intuitive way, and it's fast, and it allows you also to make fast modifications. So it's a superior way to make applications, and that's why it's becoming so popular.
That speed seems key, especially in today's business environment. Expanding on that, from your point of view, what fundamental business challenges does low code address?
Yeah, well, this is going to come back to the speed angle. We got a demographic shift, for one thing. If you've noticed, there's an exponential increase in the number of applications and processes that the world wants. It's simply extraordinary how many more applications we all require as businesses. And we don't have that many more developers to keep up with all that demand. So it's clear to any observer that we're going to need to be able to create applications faster and use less developer time for every new process and application we create. So speed is important for that. Speed is also, however, important in the last few years because organizations have had to be more agile. Speed means that you can make the change you want to make faster. And so enabling organizations to deal with change, and we've all been through a lot of it lately, is one of the keys to the rise of low code.
Got it. That's super helpful. And you read my mind in your last point there. Obviously, these last 2 years with the pandemic, both in terms of digital transformation and in terms of hybrid work, have really accelerated the rate of change in so many businesses. How has the pandemic affected the need for low code solutions?
All right. In the pandemic, organizations needed to change to survive. They needed to change in order to keep up with the new expectations from their employees who wanted better health protections, from their customers who wanted to do business in a different way, perhaps remotely, from governments who were putting on new regulations. They had to keep up with a lot of change. And if you've seen the businesses that did well with change survived and thrived in the pandemic a lot better than the ones that did poorly with change. We've all got a few stories of businesses that we saw do really poorly and how that affected them. I think businesses now understand that change is a primary battleground. Agility is a key expectation of any business today. and it's changed the world, right? We're not going back. We're not going back to the time when change seemed like a luxury and businesses seemed way too slow, and they were frustrating and disappointing to us because they wouldn't move. Right? Our kids are going to look back on this period and think, I can't believe we ever built companies and had the most immutable part of that company be the software. Right? I can't believe we ever let that happen. Let software, which is such an ephemeral thing, it's ideas, it's concepts. How could that be the thing that held us back from change? Instead, that should have been leading the way. And as of now, I think sparked by the pandemic, as of now, software will lead the way in change. And that's the transformation that's happened that's brought low code to the fore.
That's fascinating. I love that. I love that phrase about change being the primary battleground. That's so true, and hasn't been more true than these past couple of years. Would love to hear from you about Appian specifically. What's your vision, both for the company and its long-term impact, as well as the low-code movement more broadly?
Yeah. Well, when you talk about the evolution of low code, and I'll start with that, and then I'll get to Appian. Low code is becoming mature. As an industry, we're becoming mature right now, and it means that we have to change. We have to change the way we talk about ourselves and the way we introduce ourselves to others. Heretofore, we've talked about what we do. In the future, we have to talk about what we're for. Little companies and little industries get to talk about their features. Big companies and big industries talk about the need they serve. And that's where we have to go. We talk about low code. Low code is a descriptor of a feature. When you get down to it, we need to start talking about change and facilitating change. I like to say that Appian is a change engine. And sometimes I think change engine would be a better name for our industry than low code, because that at least talks about what the purpose of our software is, what the effect is, and what the customer gets when they buy it. So low code, by the way, has got to be about more than workflow. If you're going to be a successful change engine or a maker of change, you have to begin with a process when you're just discovering it and nurture that process through development and design, and then take that process all the way to automation. If you can't go from discovery to design to automation, then you're not fully facilitating the mandate of change. So if we're going to focus our industry around what we do, about what we provide rather than what features we have, we've got to cover the entire spectrum. We have to fulfill the total purpose of change: discover, design, and automate. And so my vision for the industry is the same as my vision for Appian. We have just put together that full spectrum. We now allow our customers to discover new processes with process mining, design them with workflow, and automate them with RPA, AI, document processing, and everything else, all in the same platform and all integrated. So we've now got a platform that can take the customer on the full life cycle of their processes and expedite change.
That's super exciting. I think that your point about both the change engine as well as that entire spectrum, right? So much of the focus has been on the design in the past, but the discovery, design, automation, ecosystem, so important to the business. As we wrap up here and head into the panel, any other key trends that you're keeping your eye on for the year ahead?
Well, assets are very dispersed. We're in an unusual period here in the last few years where we've never seen this degree of dispersion of assets, be they workers, customers, data. Everything is exceptionally dispersed. And so it takes a technology that will stitch back together all of these separated assets. And fortunately, low code, or workflow if you prefer, is ideal for reuniting dispersed assets. And I think that's going to continue to be important, because I believe that after the pandemic, there's still going to be an unusual amount of dispersal amongst our assets. Secondly, I think agility, business agility, will continue to be important. We're never going to go back to a time when it was okay to be a slow, lumbering organization, unresponsive to customer demands or regulation. Yeah. Our industry is going to become a change engine. I think that's a key change. And then we're going to democratize people's ability to direct machines, as the broad mission of this industry is to make it easier for people to tell a process or a computer what it should do.
Definitely. Those are great to keep in mind as we head into the panel here. Thank you, Matt, so much for your insights and expertise. A great way to kick off our conversation today. And thank you again to Appian for your partnership and making today's event possible.
You bet.
Excited to hand it over to our panel to take a look under the hood of that change engine that is low code, no code. I'm going to bring up Kevin McAllister, who's our moderator for today's event. Kevin is the research editor here at Protocol and also leads Protocol's Brain Trust expert community, as well as Protocol's Power Index ranking franchise. Kevin, over to you.
Thanks so much, Bennett, and thanks, Matt, too, for a great start to the conversation. I'm looking forward to picking it up right where you two left it off. As Bennett just said, I'm Protocol's research editor, Kevin McAllister, and I'm so excited to welcome on our two panelists today. We have first Nutanix's Chief Information Officer, Wendy Pfeiffer. Thanks so much for being here, Wendy.
Thanks for having me.
And on the other side of your monitor, we have Kerim Akgonul, Pegasystems' Chief Product Officer. Kerim, thanks so much for being here as well.
Hey, it's great to be here, Kevin.
Great. Well, I can't wait to jump right into this conversation. I've been looking forward to it for quite a while. But before we even get into it, I just want to frame the conversation a little bit, because I think we have here on the panel kind of two sides of low-code technology, low-code, no-code technology. We have Kerim, you're directly involved in the creation of the products and the technology that's driving such a huge growth industry here. And Wendy, you are on the side of the implementation and organizational readiness piece of it. And I think, I'll find this to be a successful conversation if at the end of it, we kind of get a 360-degree view of how the industry is changing, how the tech is actually implemented into successful organizations. And what I'd really like to do is start right there. Wendy, a couple of months ago, you told Protocol a little bit of a success story about your own low-code journey within Nutanix. And I wanted to even back up there. I think there's plenty of time to talk about that, and I'm looking forward to it. But, when you were looking at your own organization, when you were looking at how processes were working, I wanted to know what was the problem that you were solving, where you said, this is a problem that I think low-code can really address.
Yeah, sure. It had its basis in the challenge we had around taking IT specific skills. IT is this blend of technology skill, but also operational expertise. IT folks are the operators of technology at scale with security and cost effectiveness and so on, and performance. And so, as we started to consume technology from mixed sources, right? We were consuming infrastructure from public clouds, from on-premises. As we were pivoting to the remote work that was necessitated by the pandemic, we were consuming technology that was consumer-based technology, public internet, and using home gaming computers and so on. So we had this blend of technologies that we were trying to still apply our operational excellence principles to. How do we make that consumption cost effective, resilient, secure, et cetera? And we had our protocols, our processes for doing that with enterprise tech, with tech that we controlled and we instrumented in our hubs. But we needed to extend that expertise to this mixed mode of consumption and this mixed mode of operation. And so we were looking for, how do we create that bridge code? How do we create that universal translator to take the good ways we have of operating inside of enterprise IT and apply those to all of this broad range of modern and consumer and so on technologies. I didn't want to replace my team. And I didn't want to retrain my team. I wanted my team to be able to directly apply their years of expertise to operating across all these substrates. And so that's where I started.
Kerim, over to you. You've just heard kind of the Nutanix story, Wendy's introduction into working with a low-code platform. Is that kind of the typical experience that consumers come to you with, clients come to you with, or is that more atypical? What other kinds of trends do you see is at the beginning of a process, or at the beginning of the process for someone to start kind of implementing technology in their own organizations?
Right. No, Kevin, it's a good question. We see many different ways people actually participate in the journey. Obviously, Wendy's is a clear example of that. We see a lot of the clients that we work with, they're finding that the list of changes that they need to make in their organization is growing faster than they can keep up with it. It's much faster than their ability to actually be able to hire programmers and technical staff to be able to meet those needs. And when they discover low code, when they discover solutions like Pega solutions, where they can actually develop the applications, drive the change in their organizations faster than ever before, they immediately start with identifying some specific target outcomes. And based on their experience and success with those projects, they go wider within the organization. And it is entirely built around the need to be faster and the need to differentiate and the need to essentially respond to the changes in the marketplace.
Those specific target outcomes, how have those changed over the last 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, 6 months from now? I mean, how fast are those use cases changing for you?
I mean, the speed that organizations are adopting this type of technologies is growing significantly. Look, 2 years ago, everybody was in the midst of a digital transformation journey anyway. But there was question about which organizations were going to start their digital transformation journey, which organizations were in the middle of it, which organizations should or could. COVID came, all of that went out the window. You know, everybody realized we have to digitize. It expedited the speed of this digital transformation by 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And it illuminated the question on how digitized do we need to be? It's all the way. It basically made everyone realize that they have to come into the new generation of technology, and they needed the ability to get there faster than their competitors. And they found that low code is a very, very powerful tool in that.
Wendy, you kind of described not wanting to replace your team, wanting to augment the capabilities that they had as you were looking at which kind of technologies to implement in the processes. Can you tell me a little bit about how you went through the process of vetting some of the vendors, of looking at what would really fit your use case, and how you came to the decision that you ultimately did?
Yeah. So, we were uninformed as to the spectrum of vendors who were, in the marketplace. And so, we cast a really wide net. We looked at, the vendors who are here today, as well as, a host of others. And ultimately, we're cheap and we're practical. So it came, we made our early decisions based on price, but also based on something that was important to us, which is, vendors who understood that they would be playing in our existing ecosystem, vendors who had tooling that already offered some shortcuts, some integration with our existing, IT ecosystem of, ServiceNow and Slack and all of that tooling as well. And Nutanix's own products, AOS and HB, we looked for vendors who were certified to run on those platforms. And so we wanted the easy button in terms of ingest into our ecosystem and the ability to interact with existing workflows that were already expressed in code. Everywhere that I had existing bridge code, I wanted this low code, no code tool to have, some shortcuts and some ease of use. And in our case, we ended up starting with a product from a company called Workato. And the very first thing that I did is I took every single human in IT and put the entire team through a 1-week training with exercises required to actually go through the process of using this low code, no code tooling to digitize some component of existing workflows. And the theory was, we'll start with this common foundation. We've since expanded and used multiple additional tools, but really needed to create that universal translator, that common language that was a common language, whether the person had never written a line of code in their life, or was a a transcendent software developer. Even then, this was that starting point. And ultimately, it's a universal translator to the ingest and usage of machine learning and natural language processing tools as well. Today, it's not just my core IT team who have now received this training. We have people using, these tools, including Workato, in our sales organization, in our HR organization, our facilities team, our legal team. It's really expanded that usage because that initial model was so attractive and accessible to teams beyond just ours. And of course, that's that change agent vision that Matt was talking about in the beginning.
And how quickly did the web kind of expand there? If you started, with a really targeted idea of how to implement some of the low-code processes, how quickly did that web kind of develop around it so that it really did make its way into all the teams across Nutanix?
One of the things we did is we began measuring the business impact of this process immediately. And so we measured a couple of things. We measured the capacity improvements, how we were freeing up capacity as we began to automate using this process. And we also measured NPS, internal Net Promoter Score, how people felt about interacting with our processes. And those two measurements were incredibly favorable. They immediately began to show that we were, within our first 12 weeks, we had freed up about 30% of the total capacity of my team. Our NPS scores began to reach the high 80s and are now routinely in the low to mid 90s. And those were attractive business metrics that other teams wanted to follow. So I would say after we published those first two metrics, maybe 15, 16 weeks on, we had our first team come to us, the legal team, and ask, how can we get some of this? Because we need more capacity. We don't have budget for more capacity. And also at the moment, as people used to do with IT, right now people kind of wish us dead internally. And so how do we get that sort of that halo of people are happy with the speed and the quality and the effectiveness of delivery? Could we get that? And so our goal was always to just to say yes to that, especially because, all of this goodness is just a matter of code. It doesn't have to be elegant code because the machine can extend, that initial code set and make it more efficient and more elegant over time.
Kerim, the discussion of speed and quality and effectiveness or efficiency, are those the business metrics that you are looking to measure as well when somebody comes to you and says, we want to use Pega's platform to do many of the same things? Or what else are you measuring on your end that becomes the selling point and the crux of why someone would opt to use the Pega platform?
Thanks, Kevin. So it's great to see Wendy, the way that she basically takes the mission with the confidence and determination and drives the change in the organization. And we see quite a few CEOs take that approach because it is vital to the survival, to the flourishing of those organizations. And they look at a variety of different metrics. One of the metrics that people look at is essentially the speed to actually introduce the change into the organization. For the last 20 some years, Pegasystems' tagline has been build for change, because we all realize that change is the only constant in business and that organizations need to be able to adapt to change as quickly as possible. So a lot of organizations look at the ability to introduce that change, to make these new applications live as quickly as possible, while they cannot introduce net new technical staff into the organization. But they look at efficiencies around reducing the time it takes to basically deliver the outcomes in those applications as well. And that's a metric that a lot of our clients look at. A process that used to take 15, 20 different manual steps, how do we basically drive that down to 1, 2, 3 manual interactions by the humans, whether using any means possible, using the rules engines, using predictive analytics, using robotics, using integration, and to be able to reduce the number of touches in order to get the work done within the organization. But at the same time, a lot of organizations will also look at it from directly market impacting metrics as well. We have a lot of low-code applications that are leveraging AI and decisioning that determine how we engage with customers and how we basically are driving retention into those organizations, how we're handling upsell, cross-sell, better customer service. And that basically directly impacts the bottom line of the organizations. They look a lot of companies will look at retention rates. A lot of companies will look at upsell rates. They will look at the ability to provide customer service using the low-code approach and be able to really drive a business impact directly to the organization.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the predictive analytics side of it? What goes into that? What's the use case of reducing the touch points, as you said?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I look at low code not just from a process perspective, but I look at it as a means of a new way to develop business applications. Obviously, the process and the workflow and case management are core elements of it, but I believe the same concept is applied to other aspects of business applications. The simplest one is the customer service, right? All the applications that people build to manage the contact centers, to be able to engage with clients. Now, when a client comes to an organization, right, they have an intent, right? They go to the website, they go to the mobile app, they call the contact center, they walk into a branch. Let's pretend we still do that, right? And there's actually a contact with the end consumer directly with the organization. Why are they there? And what is the best way to engage with this customer? How can we use the vast amounts of data that's available to us and apply predictive analytics and machine learning and determine what is the best way to engage with this customer right now? Do we want to educate them on the products? Do we want to show them better ways to use the products they've already purchased? Is there an upsell opportunity? Is there a churn risk? And how do we determine the best way to engage with this client to drive longer, better, successful relationship, both for the company as well as for the individual, and be able to apply the low-code principles to determine these types of outcomes? Does that answer, Kevin? Yeah,
absolutely. Wendy, I want to check back in with you. You mentioned the legal team came to you and said, "Hey, we want to expand our own use of this," and I think that we have talked up to this point about what low code has empowered different teams to do. I wanted to know if there's been an example so far since you began using the technology where you've had to say, no, actually, that's not something that this can help with, and we're going to have to look for a different solution there. Have there been any situations that you've come across where you haven't been able to solve it so far with a low code implementation?
The temptation is to try to think of one. Offhand, I can't think of anything. The first part of this process is, truly documenting the ideal or the unique workflow, the ideal or the unique interaction design, and then finding ways to translate that into something that can be enabled by technology. And, I have yet to find something in my experience over the years that can't be enhanced, at least in some small way. I'm a fan of James Clear, who says, a great change can occur even by changing some atomic habits, some very small things. And that's the case here. But look, here's the way I think about it. I'm a great fan of and student of John Madden, and John used to talk about our unfair advantage, that essentially every team has an unfair advantage that's unique to them, that's bought and paid for, that they worked hard to get. Maybe it's a particular player or some series of plays they've developed. And he used to talk about the fact that no team in their right mind would work so hard and buy and pay for that unfair advantage and then leave it on the bench and not bring it onto the playing field. And so when I think about companies in this low code, no code journey, every company's pretty special. We have our unfair advantage. We're not just trying to survive. We're not just trying to sit on the bench. We want to be out there on the playing field, and we want to be winning. And so, we don't want to leave our unique IP or our unique process or the skills of a particular cohort of our team on the bench when we're on the playing field. We want to bring them onto the business playing field. And today the business playing field is enabled by, and in many cases, only realized via technology. And so how do we avoid leaving this unfair advantage that we've built in our companies, in our legal teams, our sales teams, our marketing teams, our product teams, our facilities? How do we avoid leaving them on the bench? This is the enabler for that. This low code, no code is the enabler. Even if it's only partial, it's still taking advantage of something that we've bought and paid for.
How do you navigate that spectrum, of low code, no code? It seems like there's a couple of different avenues that a number of companies are going down. There's been some bleed, I think, in terms of models between companies developing low code solutions as opposed to no code solutions, and how sometimes they both compete with one another, as well as have some real synergy to them. You said you develop a common language kind of for your team as they're working through low code or no code products. How did you actually go about doing that? How did you know that was going to be a necessity? And what was the step that you needed to take in order to make sure that everybody was on the same plane and could use could get off the bench and use that technology?
Yeah, I think it starts with what Matt was saying initially, right? It starts with having the knowledge that we need to transform, that we need to change, and then documenting that. And so, we started with a process. And we even today, when new teams come on board, we start them with a process of writing, of doing this essential element of any asynchronous interaction, which is to document the process and the interaction design. And we documented, these ideal processes and ideal interaction designs, and then made sure that we all agreed, if we were operating this way, if we were to do these things in this order, and we were to offer this interaction, would that be getting it right? Would be getting it right the first time, sort of, borrowing language from the lean programming space, and just actually achieving, highlighting these processes, highlighting optimal workflows, documenting those, discussing optimal interaction designs is a huge value in the exercise. It's where it starts, right? Stephen Covey would say, any creative act first starts with the imagination, right? So we had to have those discussions. After that, it's just a matter of code. And, whether my team is writing it using one of the many tools available, or the machines taking that and expanding it, is less important than that first act. And so, it was coming to that realization, which there's lots of factors that drive us to that realization. Certainly this pivot to hybrid work or hybrid education or hybrid everything has led us to this moment where we realize that we have to find some way, first of all, of enumerating, documenting, describing what we want to do and how we want to do it, and having a shared understanding of that. That becomes a spec, after which is there truly value in having some highly skilled, very expensive team of software developers create that, instantiate that technically from scratch? Or can we get the same effect by, using ultimately the expertise of the machine? Well, if you sit in an engineering team surrounded by a bunch of really, really smart engineers, you'd say like, we could do that uniquely. But for the most part, if you're just trying to operate and you're trying to be efficient, these tools are an accelerant on this process.
I want to come back to that in just a second, but Kerim, first I want to pose the same question actually that I posed to Wendy before. It's been almost a year, I think, since a pretty big Pega update that really expanded some low-code capabilities on the platform. Even before then or since then, have there been processes, have there been things that you have wanted to be able to give people the access to do with low code that you haven't had a chance to do yet? And how does that process or how does that feedback inform how you actually go about developing some of the practices and some of the tech?
Yeah, Kevin, great question. So obviously this set of tooling is changing rapidly every day. And every year, every other year, we see a tremendous amount of excitement on one portion of technology versus another, right? There's a lot of emphasis on, the different aspects. We started historically from our business. We started from an automation perspective. It's always been around, can we automate this application? Can we automate this process? Can we automate this interaction? And that has evolved over the years, of course, and it included inevitably lots of different, these buzzwords. For a long time, it was a lot about the integration. And now a lot of the focus is on integration these days, but everybody realizes that integration is just a central part of any time you're trying to develop a business application, a process-centric solution that's going to automate towards the outcomes. So it is understood. It's essentially, it's just table stakes at this point, right? For a while, there was a lot of emphasis on being able to embed the business rules into the applications. That's expected to be there these days. It has evolved for a while. If you think back a couple of years ago, there was a tremendous amount of excitement around robotics. We're just going to put a robot on it, and the robot is just going to do it. It's really just a part of the tool of how you're going to drive to the business outcomes quickly using whatever means possible. And you talked about the Pega's latest iterations, and the one part that I'm very excited about is understanding that all these capabilities, the integrations, the business rules, the robotics, are all essentially just an expected table stakes part of the solutions. The next part, I believe we're seeing a lot of engagement and excitement around is what's called artificial intelligence these days. Now, that's a big phrase that means many different things to many different people. I like to think about it as the concept of a process AI. In the sense, a process started, a process is going to follow a path. It's going to either successfully drive towards an outcome, or it's going to hit some sort of an exceptional path. Can you apply this learnings of AI, machine learning, doing predictions, apply that throughout the life of that process and be able to actually impact it with change and identify exceptions before they happen, identify hiccups before they happen, identify things that's going to go wrong, that's going to cause the company delays or costs or customers or fines, and actually correct it before it happens and change the trajectory of the applications and the trajectory of the business by learning from previous interactions. And this basically, we call this process AI. The idea is to intertwine deterministic rules with predictive rules in the life cycle of the process. And I believe this will become a table stakes standard part of any business application very soon, and we'll just know that it's there, because how could you otherwise get ahead of problems in the business and correct them before they happen? People use a lot of BI tools these days, right? There was basically this BI tool and then the other BI tool every year. This one's going to solve all the analytics problems, but they're all looking at data from last year. Oh, look at all this stuff that didn't work out last year. And then you can have dashboards and tremendous number of charts that show you all the stuff that didn't go wrong the way people predicted that it would or wished that it would. I think the ability to be able to have AI in the midst of the processes of how we do business will allow the organizations to get ahead of the undesirable outcomes and be able to actually have a plan to correct the path to be able to drive it.
Kerim, I agree so much. Sorry, I know you didn't call on me, Kevin.
Please.
And you're speaking my language.
Great. I mean, look, one of our one of our head of engineering makes a great analogy, right? It talks about basically, software development is much more like skiing than golf, right? In golf, I can't golf, but it looks like you take a swing, you hit the ball, and you sort of watch it from that point on. With skiing, I'm a terrible skier. With skiing, you are course correcting at every single turn. And because you can see what's going on, you can understand who's coming, what's coming, where is it icy, where is it bumpy. And I believe businesses are always looking to course correct. And being able to actually do that programmatically, intelligently, using the power of computers and machines, I think will be that differentiated skills that organizations will leverage, and it will be table stakes.
Wendy, I saw you nodding, of course, kind of in the real-time responsiveness part of what Kerim was saying. Is that one of the kind of focuses of your own low-code implementations?
Absolutely. Was I telegraphing that? Look, one of the outputs of this digital transformation, this pivot to virtual business that we've undergone, is that virtual business creates a lot of data and a lot of metadata from business operations. That same data isn't necessarily created and machine readable from physical operations. And so we have this rich new source of data, which if we choose to ingest it, we can use that to inform our tooling and our operations. And so, Kerim was talking about, sort of getting to the point where we have these AI-enabled processes. We use a host of tools in my organization, one from a company called MoveWorks that does exactly this. And so today, 85% of all of the issues that happen in my organization, all of the issues, problems, outages, breaches, etc., are both detected and addressed autonomously via code, no human interaction required. That is a 35% increase from a year ago and a 55% increase from 2 years ago. And so what happens is this is additive, right? The more that we are collecting data from our digitally enabled operations and analyzing that data and using that data to inform and enhance and extend via ML and AI tools our operations, is the extent to which we can get to much more efficient, speedy, effective, accurate operations. And we start to get to, I'm a believer that, every time we call something AI, we're not quite there yet, but we're certainly getting to behavior, prediction. But ultimately, the magic in what I just said is not that we do 85% of our work autonomously, but we detect 85% of incoming and address it autonomously, full cycle. That's the transformation that we're talking about. That's that use of machine learning and AI enhanced operations that Kerim's talking about. And there's no way you get there from zero unless along the way you have some tooling that helps you to translate as much as you can into machine readable code that then throws off data, which is also machine readable and ingested into the model. It's a powerful transformation and really good for the bottom line as well.
Well, so let's talk about that 85% and more specifically kind of the 15% that's left over there. I think, any conversation about low code tools or no code tools, has to touch on the changing role of developers and kind of how it impacts skill sets. When you say 85% of the problems are detected and don't require and are fixed basically without human interaction, does that become the new norm for your developers, is solving that 15% that's really difficult? And then how does that impact the organization then as that number grows from 85% to 90% to 95%?
I'm not sure how much farther it grows. First of all, I'll answer the last part of the question. I think we're kind of at a nice balance, But the way that it affects the developers and the practitioners and all the teams is it allows them to focus on the novel, the more complex, the interesting, new things, newer technologies, also people and human interactions. And it turns out that the best technologists are inspired by this, are interested by in that kind of work. That's the level that folks are trying to get to. It's very satisfying work. I have literally zero churn in my team during this time of the Great Resignation. I have really, really happy team members who love this work, who say this is the best technology job I've had, because I'm not spending all my time, reapplying the same Band-Aid to the gunshot wound to the head, right? We're beyond that. The patient is not only stabilized, they're out there running marathons, and now I'm looking at enhancement and true additional capability, competitive differentiation, those sorts of things. And all of these things are measured as well, right? We've seen an improvement in, developer productivity and employee productivity during these times of remote work, even at the creative end of the spectrum. And so that's delightful work. That's human-centered work. And especially as Gen Z enters the workplace and disproportionately enters the technology workplace, it's important to us to connect to the things that they find delightful and avail ourselves of their creativity and their productivity. So this is a nice mode to work in, a very individual-centered mode to work in. And, we're doing interesting work. We have folks who are interested and engaged. And ultimately, if you have a company composed of knowledge workers, which many of us are in these virtual times, the more interested and engaged your knowledge workers are, the better the outcome for your company, hopefully.
Kerim, when I asked that question, it looked like you were rearing and ready to go. It seems like probably one of the topics that you get asked about a lot. How do you respond to that same question about skill sets changing, about developers' roles evolving over time? Considering I'm sure that's a concern of customers and clients, and probably a question that you field fairly often.
That's great questions. And Wendy's organization is apparently clearly much more mature and looking for opportunities to optimize the outcomes, which is great. But look, I have no concerns that we're going to run out of work for technical people. I have no concerns that we're going to run out of challenging projects to take on with software engineers and architects and programmers. Things are changing. Cool stuff is being built every day. The future is going to be dramatically different than where we are today. So there's lots of cool stuff, exciting stuff, innovative stuff that people are building in software companies and large organizations. But I tell you, the greatest people, the most strongest software engineers, developers, they don't want to build a form for the website. They don't want to spend time building a screen where the manager clicks approve. They don't want to basically do something that it can be just managed by low-code applications that can handle the 75, 80, 85% of the use cases of a real enterprise. Low-code applications allow enterprises to automate those workflows, capture the UIs, their decisions, their integrations, their processes, their approvals, their service level agreements, updating other systems, sending out engagements and notifications to people. They can just do that without people coding lines of cryptic code onto a screen. We got it. The tools are in place. They're mature. We can get organizations to deliver those outcomes faster and cheaper than any time before. One of our clients, Siemens, talks about they basically have implemented an app factory in the organization, and they talk about driving 10x the outcomes at 1/10 the cost. Now, doesn't mean that their developers are not doing anything. Their developers are working on differentiating, innovating capabilities. They're worried about the future of the company, not essentially how the organization just runs every day. They're able to take those savings and apply them to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. And the demand for technical change is dramatically higher than the net new developers coming into the marketplace. So it's not even an option at this point for most companies whether they're going to use low-code solutions to be able to meet the demands of their business. The question is where they're going to apply it, when are they going to start it, what kind of programs they're going to put in place, like Wendy has articulated, to actually make the best out of it and keep a workforce that is effective, that is satisfied, that is driving change into the organization. And the technical staff, there's so much cool stuff for them to work on to be able to define the future that I'm not worried about them getting bored at all.
So, a question, I guess, back to both of you then. You both mentioned the future. You both mentioned kind of the Gen Z developer, the net new developer who's coming into the workplace, now or in a couple of years as well. What becomes the differentiating factor then as you're looking to hire, as an organization is looking to hire, if the specialized use cases are really where their talents are going to be applied? How do you solve for that? How do you look for that kind of new skill set to be able to say this person is really going to be able to not just do the basics that are now handled by a low-code platform, but are going to be able to go above and beyond and solve these really challenging problems?
Wendy, would you like to start?
Sure. Thinking about a couple of characteristics of Gen Z. First, truly digitally native generation, and a generation that's focused on the needs of the individual. And so the extent to which we can disintermediate their work experience is the extent to which we can directly connect to what makes them productive and what they uniquely bring to our organization. So we can't let tooling get in the way. We can't let standards get in the way. We can't let platforms get in the way. We can't let processes get in the way if we want to avail ourselves of this diverse, incredibly comfortable in the digital environment generation. And so, we've kind of tried to move beyond declaring a particular standard or a particular tool set or a particular process with which we get things done, and instead focused on outcomes. We're not perfect at this, and we have a long path to go on in that regard. But the more that we, at a minimum obfuscate, if not completely disintermediate sort of tools that dictate a process or platforms that dictate a worldview or systems that dictate a way of delivering, the more we take those things out of the equation, the more we're actually tapping into the strength of our knowledge workers. Again, there's a lot of fluffy nebulousness in what I'm saying, but ultimately we will have to be human beings centered if we're going to truly take advantage of the individual productivity, the individualized productivity of Gen Z. At least that's my guess as an old tired Gen Xer who's responsible to figure this out.
So I'll try to answer the question. I won't repeat some of the very good points that Wendy made, but I look at the people that are coming into my organization from a couple of different lenses. And, we talk about essentially the magic happens when you have people from different backgrounds, when they actually come together. I truly appreciate people who have long, deep expertise, whether in a specific industry or a specific technology, and they made all the mistakes and they took all the wrong turns and they figured out the way out of them, and they've actually done it and they know it. They have muscle memory on how to do things right for delivering value to our customers, and then mixing them with new people, new staff, younger generation who have essentially a different mindset and who look at the world not from the past perspective, but from the future perspective, and be able to actually combine those individuals together to be able to build, from my business, differentiated products that are very focused on the outcomes for our clients. And, some of them are, the new generation, some of them are experienced staff, but I believe they have to come together and be able to move us forward and get the new ideas in with the experience of the past.
Well said, and I think that that's probably as good a spot as any to start wrapping up here. I want to thank Appian and Matt Calkins and Bennett for starting off this conversation. Wendy, Pfeiffer, thanks so much for being here. Kerim, Akgonul, thank you so much for being here. This has really been a terrific conversation. I've certainly learned a lot. I hope our audience has as well. And thank you to the audience for tuning in and sticking with us here through the hour. If you want to check out more on low code, no code, you can check out our market analysis at protocol.com/power index. If you want to hear from Wendy and hopefully Kerim as well soon, you can check out Brain Trust at protocol.com/brain trust. But thank you very much. If you are in the morning, have a great rest of your day. In the afternoon, have a great afternoon. And if you are in the evening like me, hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks so much, Wendy. Thanks so much, Kerim, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks.